Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today, I'm going to be joined by Jessica Baum, who is the founder of the Relationship Institute of Palm Beach. She is the author of Anxiously Attached and the forthcoming book, Safe, an attachment formed guide to building more secure relationships. We are going to have an in-depth discussion about this book. I read it cover to cover. I think it is amazing and so transformational. And in today's conversation, Jessica shares all of her insights and we break down some of the research she explains in the book. And I know after listening to our conversation, you are going to want to get a copy for yourself. So without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, Jessica, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm so happy to be here.
We are here to talk all about your soon to be released book, Safe, which I had the pleasure of reading over the weekend. And it is so good and so beautifully written. I have so many questions and notes about it. So before we dive into it, I'd love if you could just share a little bit about the background of your work and tell people listening what inspired you to write a second book because you had the first book,
Mm.
Anxiously Attached, which did so well. Tell people how Safe is different and what inspired you to go for round two.
Yeah, well, I was pretty humbled at the fact that when I wrote Anxiously Attached, I was doing a lot of work, but I actually had a lot more work to do. And a lot of people were coming to me about healing attachment wounds and avoidant attachment and all these questions. And I study interpersonal neurobiology, so I really study attachment from like a very deep lens, and I just like got a deep dive into that.
Hmm.
And I decided to write the book Safe to really help people understand one, how to have safe relationships, but on such a neuroscience level,
Yeah.
and how to act, what healing attachment wounds really mean, and really like healing these wounds from the inside out. Like there's a lot out there on attachment, but not a lot that take you inside the experience as much. So this is a very holistic view of attachment, the wheel of attachment, how we start to have safe relationships, what we need to actually heal and have these relationships. So it's a deeper dive. It's a much deeper dive. It's a much more holistic dive. It covers all four attachment styles a lot. And the work inside Anxiously Attached was pretty deep. I had somatic practices and I have even deeper ones with this book. So I feel like this is the deeper dive from that book. And my work got so much deeper. I
Yeah.
didn't expect that, but like I still had a lot of work to do, and I share really pretty openly about that in the book.
You do. I got chills so many times as I was reading the book. You shared one story in particular when you had a panic attack, I think during college, and I got chills reading that story because I had a very similar story in an early edition of my book and then ended up taking it out because I don't know, just for me. And at that time, I was like, I just don't know if I'm ready to put all this personal stuff out there. And I just think it's so beautiful the way you include your own personal narrative and how that's woven through the whole book because I think it just adds such a deeper level of insight into the experience when you can share it through your own personal lens.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, it's a choice and it's a tough choice to make. But I try to say like what would be the best for my reader, and I want the reader to know that like yes, I'm an expert in this. Yes, I study it, but like I've suffered. I've healed. I have more healing to do. I'm human just like you. Like I'm with you. Like I can relate from the inside out. So, and I shared a lot about a relationship ending in
Mhm.
Safe, and that was particularly hard. I was doing a lot of attachment work and he was too, but there was a juncture in our relationship where I just kept doing the work and he chose not to. And it took me a
Mhm.
long time to kind of respect that everybody can go as deep as they can go. And I ended up, continuing and he chose not to. So it was like a fork in the road.
Yeah. Now, you use the word, healing our attachment wounds in the book and in our conversation today. You also mentioned that, after writing Anxiously Attached, you still had more work to do. And even today, you said there's still more work to do. What is your opinion on the degree to which these wounds can ever be fully healed versus managed significantly more effectively, but kind of maybe they're always there to a little bit of a degree?
Yeah, I mean, nothing's black and white. I definitely have earned security. And so my internal world is very different through a lot of holding and healing. So
Hmm.
I don't want you to feel like there's a destination because healing is ever progressive.
Hmm.
However, and I talk about this in Safe, like when we're held in a certain way and our implicit wounds, our attachment wounds come to the surface, and we hold them from the body into the right hemisphere, we integrate them into the left.
Hmm.
So healing really, I explain the science. There is a science to it. I talk about how the neural nets open, how attachment wounds move in the body, and healing really does happen. And I think when I started this work, you don't really realize what's there until you go there. And there was a period where I was like, quote unquote, like more in the fire, I would say, of my implicit and earlier experiences coming to consciousness. I didn't stay there forever. You know, we feel like we're going to stay there forever.
Yeah.
That's not to say I don't have more healing to do. That's to say like I've held a lot of what I've avoided and needed to avoid. And now it's like I have more space and I have more choices and my reaction, my reflex t response time is different. My choice in who I surround myself with is different. So there very much is a trajectory towards healing, and yet you always need to be having these conversations with yourself, and things can pop up all the time. But I think once you work through some of the deeper layers, you do evolve, and you have, you
Yeah.
know, through neuroplasticity and other things, you have more resources internally and out
Mhm.
externally.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
It really does. And, I think of someone, I've had clients before who I'll do their family history, and I'm like, that sounds pretty good. Like, I really can't identify any early attachment wounds, but maybe it was something later in life that kind of caused for the first time for them some sort of rupture in how they attached, to people. And so then it becomes a matter of healing that. All of that to say that you can do your early attachment work and feel pretty good, and then something can happen that can cause another little rupture. And so the healing work has to begin again. I think it's kind of a rupture and repair cycle to an extent. You write about the focus of independence in our culture. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. I primarily focus on sex and relationships, and I see more and more articles out there just about people focusing less on romantic relationships, or they just want to throw in the towel or focus on just building a really good platonic network. And while I see some value in that, I would just love your opinion on kind of how this fits in, how the societal trend or shift fits into attachment, to security, to kind of what's happening in younger generations who are out there dating and trying to meet people.
Yeah, so I talk about like how our culture promotes independence, self-regulation, self-reliance, which is a horrible message. It, it contradicts everything our neurobiology needs to
Yeah.
thrive and live in the world. So we're
Mhm.
supposed to be in a lot of connection with we're supposed to be in a lot of community with others, and we tend to do better when we are in connection in that way. And I think growing up, I mean, in my generation, it was like cool to be independent and all of these things. And the truth is, everybody, we need each other. And when you
Yeah.
start to do this work, you really get in touch with the vulnerability around how much we need each other. Having said that, our culture is moving into a more left dominant hemisphere way of being and relating. So we are moving more and more into avoidance, which is a very scary place to be because when you're more avoidant, you are more independent and you can accomplish a lot of things and you can be very successful, but you tend to be very lonely. You're living in the left hemisphere more of your brain, which can accomplish things, but the right hemisphere is where we relate. It's where we have our human connection. And
Mhm.
so a lot of people shift left for survival. And I talk about that in the book. I did that. I was a workaholic But healing embedded trauma, healing attachment wounds is actually about shifting into the right hemisphere
Hmm.
and being with the sensations and the memories in the body. And then when you do that, you can have deeper relationships because you can
Yeah.
relate deeply. So it's scary that, I think 75%, I have another statistic in the book, of our population is more left shifted and
Hmm.
very lonely, and only 25% of us, and I had to work to get back into the right hemisphere way of relating, but it is a much more deeper, more meaningful way of operating in the world.
And how do you think that helps or inhibits accomplishment? Because you talk about, okay, when you're in the left hemisphere of the brain, yes, you can accomplish a lot of things, but you're less relational. I mean, I would kind of think that the more relational we are, longer term, probably the more accomplished we can be.
No,
What are your
not
thoughts?
necessarily. Like if you're task focused and you want to get a lot of things done and you're living in sympathetic activation, you're more in the left
Hmm.
and you're not connecting as much. But if you're in the right, you're like slowing down, you're more present, you're more in the moment. But the drive to be successful might not be as strong because you're actually like appreciating more of life and the agenda isn't as driven. So the truth is we use both sides all the time.
Yeah.
But like I write about in the book, like I was very left shifted to avoid my attachment trauma. So a
Hmm.
lot of this happens unconsciously and is supported by a culture that says if you're busy and successful, you're successful. Meanwhile, you're burnt out, you're exhausted, you're tired, you don't have meaningful relationships in your life, you're feeling really alone, and you don't know why or what to
Yeah.
do. So the work is to shift back into the right, but the right holds all of our pain, attachment pain, and trauma. So we need help with that shift of slowing down and being with what's going on inside.
Can you talk a little bit more? You cite Ian McGilchrist research on right brain left versus left brain, which changed a little bit the way even I understood how the two function. Because I think, like most people, I think of left brain being more analytical, logical, right brain being more emotional. And he has done research indicating that right brain versus left brain is almost like two different people
Mhm.
experiencing the world at the same time. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. I mean, his work is really great, and
I had to read that like a couple times, and so I would love to just hear your interpretation firsthand.
yeah, no, I mean, so when I was more left shifted, it's like that type of thinking is more transactional. So it's more like, what do I got to do? It's like when you see a tree, it's like, what does that tree do for me? It works well with, it's like a map of the world. It's like you can look at the world like as a map, and you can, and we need it. We need both, and both sides are working all the time.
Mm.
But that side is more concrete. And so the right side is more about like being in relationships. So like the tree is not just a tree, but I'm like with this particular tree and I'm not putting a label on it. And it's not about what it can do for me, but it's about being in real relationship with the tree.
Hmm.
So they operate they really need to work hand in hand, and we need both. The problem with our culture is that we're more left the left is taking the lead and
Hmm.
it's hurting us relationally. So
Okay.
if the left takes the lead, we're not deeply relating to each other and we become very lonely. It's like the cause, Ian McGilchrist would say it's an underlying cause of the loneliness epidemic that we're in. When we shift into the right, we become more relational and we have more an ability to connect deeply to everything, each other and everything. So people shift to the left for many reasons, and one of them is their attachment wounds and trauma. And our culture really supports that type of living, and most people end up very lonely and meaningless and really, really struggling in their life. And you get to like the top of the mountain, and you're like,
You don't have
what's
anyone to share
next?
the view with. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
What do you think it is? Is it primarily that message of self-reliance and independence that has pushed us toward that shift, or is because that's always kind of been to a degree present in Western cultures, particularly in the US, but I feel like there's been an even more significant shift in more recent years. What do you think has kind of been the accelerator for that?
Right, it's intergenerational trauma. So we tend to mirror our parents' brain as newborns.
Mhm.
So if our parents are more left shifted, so if they're more focused on tasks and they didn't get their emotional needs met, and many of our generation they were stuck in avoidance and workaholism, and then they had babies and they didn't know how to emotionally be present, which is the number one thing you need for secure attachment, but they were there, but they weren't there in the emotional way that we needed. They're more left shifted. Our brains will wire to match theirs and will become little productive things,
Mhm.
right? And we'll join in that way. We can join in left shifted ways, right? So most of the time it's intergenerational and it's when we're babies, we're not fully developed. Our brain isn't fully developed. So we're really kind of mirroring a lot of where our parents are at. So
Yeah.
the left hemisphere, the avoidance, the workaholism, all of that is culturally being passed down through nervous systems primarily.
And is that happening around the world, or is that more of a phenomenon here in the US?
No, it's happening around the world, but like particularly in the US, I would say. I
Mhm.
would say some Western places are probably a little bit more connected. I don't study enough to know exactly what pockets, but there are pockets of the world
Mhm.
that are happier. They're more slowed down. They're focused on other things. They're more present. They're less materialistic, less goal driven.
Mhm.
How many, I'm sure people listening I knew grew up like if I was successful, I'd be happy. If I'm perfect, I'll be happy, and our parents inherently instill like what they know to try to help us survive in us. So then we strive and strive and strive, and we don't realize that it's human connection and it's community and it's meaningful relationships that like actually what makes us thrive in our life.
Right. And I think so much of it too is redefining what the measure of success is. Like, what is the metric? We know from research on happiness that, once you reach a certain point economically, like, not that much more is going to make you happy. It really then comes down to your relationships with other people.
And like through my own work of like becoming more embodied, because people would like pretty much say that I've been successful in my own way. Um, Through my own work of doing this deep healing, I would say like being successful is so much less important than having wonderful, meaningful connections in my life. And I'm not even talking about romantic relationships. I just
Yeah.
think connection is everything. And so when you shift out of that mode, you realize you only live once.
Hmm.
What are you really chasing after? And a lot of my book talks about like what a brilliant protector that left hemisphere is. And like I needed it. And my hideout of workaholism protected me from a lot of my pain. And we don't face our world until we have safe people and safe environments. And I explain the science around that too. So we need these protections.
For sure, for sure. Um, how vital would you say somatic work is in healing attachment wounds?
I would say it's the only path to healing.
Yeah.
So, I talk about in the book a lot about implicit memory. Like you
Hmm.
can't leave this book without understanding that sensation in your body is memory.
Hmm.
And if you're going to a therapist and trying to heal your attachment wounds and they're not helping you go there, granted, I have clients that don't want to go there because they're not ready. But
Sure.
if the therapist isn't going there, you're not going to heal your attachment wounds. So, like, our trauma lives in the body, not in
Hmm.
the head.
Hmm.
Talk therapy does not heal this.
Hmm.
And this book I made for therapists to work with their clients. So, like, you can do
Oh.
this book and bring it to your therapist. Like, it is a companion. I teach you what an anchor is, what kind of holding you need, how to go into your body, why, if you don't do this, it stays in the body. And then we unconsciously reenact it with familiar patterns and people. And that's like kind of miserable too.
For sure. And I mean, thank you for not gatekeeping these exercises that you include in the book. I mean, as I was reading through some of them, in some of them, I really felt like I am the client in a therapy session. Other ones, I was like, wow, this is like exactly what I would say to my own client in a moment like this. And they are just so rich and powerful. And so I think, especially for people who maybe don't have access to, well-trained
100%.
therapist or really good mental health services, that these exercises in the book will actually take you really far. Like,
Yeah.
bravo, they are very good.
And I think that's the point. First of all, there's a lot of therapists that don't know how to hold space.
Yeah.
And I talk about this concept of finding your anchors and what that means, what their nervous system needs to be like. And I really want everyone to be able to do this work. And you really don't need a therapist, but you need a certain type of person that's in enough ventral safety and
Hmm.
is not judgmental and can hold space. And I spell that all out because
Yeah.
healing should be more accessible.
Yeah.
And it's a long process. So like I want people to, I call find co-anchors if you're not struggling too much, or to find your anchors and what you really need, because a lot of therapists like want to assess and then give you like a solution instead of like hold and like be
Mhm.
with. So this is more like IFS. We meet these
Yeah.
parts, we hold, we move, we heal the trauma.
Yeah, I know. So good. I love, love, love also how you made that shift from using the word trigger to awakening. Thank you for that because if I hear that word trigger one more time, let's just say it's it just makes me crazy. I think it's such an overly used word, and I couldn't agree more with the frustration about the negative connotation that it holds. I've already told people, like, since reading this book on Sunday, we're not saying triggered anymore. We're saying awakened.
I love
Talk a
that.
little bit about how
I
you did
mean, so
that.
when you start to understand implicit memory, you start to understand that memory lives in the body as sensation. And when you have the quote unquote trigger, right, it's memory being reawakened, right? And so for me, trigger like also had some shame around it. Like, here I am again, my big
Yeah, getting
emotions,
triggered.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But like when you understand interpersonal neurobiology, you're like, oh my God, a younger part of me is waking up right now. And all of a sudden, like your relationship to your inner experiences change when you're like, a younger part of me is awakened, being awakened right now. I either need to attend to it or bring it to someone to help me attend to it. But
Mhm.
this is part of me. This is a part of me that I need to learn how to relate differently to. And this part of me is allowed here. She's having big feelings. She's having a big moment. Like, this is important. This is not some part of me that I need to like shame or point the
Yeah.
finger at.
No, I think that was so good. We don't have any more time, unfortunately, so we're gonna
That's
wrap
okay.
up. But if you have not already, go out there, pre-order this book so that it is in your mailbox when it officially releases, which is when?
October 28th.
October
And
28th.
I have some free links. You should
Oh,
that like if you pre-order the book now, I have a blueprint to understanding your attachment styles and beyond. So the wheel of attachment
mhm.
for your listeners specifically who are watching this. And I have an hour conversation with my mentor who studies interpersonal neurobiology of what it means and the journey to inner security.
Yeah.
And we really like unpack that.
Mhm.
So for people who pre-order, I want them to get something like right now and like
Yeah.
start to really understand this on a deeper level. So we could share. I think that link was shared with you. If not,
Okay.
share that
I
link,
will.
and that way
I'll put
people
it.
who
Mhm.
pre-order, they can get something right now and start the process and get excited
Awesome.
about the
Yeah,
prices.
I'll include all of that in the show description so that it's accessible. Jessica, thank you so much. This was such a great conversation. I can't wait till the rest of the world gets this book into their hands, and hopefully we'll stay connected.
We will. We will definitely stay connected. And thank you so much for reading the book and supporting me. And I just really appreciate you so
Of
much.
course, of course. Happy to.
Yeah.